Booyah!
You know the sound is there.
What do you think, young man? The official.
If I make it back home, I'm just stuck here in a dream.
Alright, so first off, sorry for the voiceover. Normally we like to do things on the spot, but we were working with our buddies and talking a lot, so didn't get any valuable information communicated. First step in doing a starter job, disconnect the battery. So I'm doing this here. It's in the trunk of the C7 Corvettes. Negative terminal will work just fine. So in reality, to do this job, none of us have ever done this before, so we figured it out on the fly. Just did it in our buddy's driveway. I've heard you can just pull the heat shield off the side of the starter and actually get it out of there. We weren't having much luck, although you'll see throughout this video he ends up pulling the heat shield after I've disconnected the exhaust, but it did give us a little bit more wiggle room. So you'll see there's two 13 millimeters he's taken off right here. It's under the passenger side of the car. Those two 13s are all that hold the starter up. So you'll see I left this in here just so you can see he tries to wrestle it out with the heat shield on for a little bit, finding a way. There's absolutely no way that thing's coming out of there without that heat shield off. So you'll see close to the exhaust there where his left hand is, there's a heat shield running down the side of the starter, and you'll see eventually we end up taking that off later. But she was a bugger to get out of there, man. It looked really, really easy, which is why we started tackling it in the driveway. Wasn't terribly difficult at all, and pretty much anybody can do this who has a few hand tools, but just takes a little bit of patience, a little bit of doing. So here we are, swapped out for me. On the exhaust, there's two 15 millimeter studs on the rear side of this piece. And then there are these four, you can only see two in this, but on the opposite side, closer to the engine, is two more studs that hold the manifold up right there. So I just loosened all four of those nuts so that way it could drop down. There's a little clip here. This is where I ended up going in with a wrench above the control arm right there. Found a nice little gap to do the one you can't really get a socket on. The other two you can get with a swivel. Another pro move is you'll see these transmission lines that are to the right of my hand there. They're in the way of one of the bolts. What I ended up doing was putting the extension up above them and putting a socket on the other side and clicking it together above the lines, because you can't fit the socket through, but you can fit the extension through, and then there's no problems there. And then this is me taking off the back side right here. It's just two more 15 millimeter nuts. So you just loosen that all up so you can drop it down. It spares you like maybe a quarter of an inch, maybe a little bit more, but it's pretty important when it comes to fishing this out. It made it a lot easier. There we go, exhaust is loose. Send the old guy back in because he's the one who started with the starter. I actually left a bit of audio in here though because this is pretty funny. Anybody who watches this channel knows he's actually an engineer GM.
I don't enjoy stupidity at all. And to me, this is just... There's certain things that are going to break on your car, guaranteed. And a starter is definitely one of them. You're going to have to change a starter. So, if you're an engineer, then you have to say, all right, we got to know. We got to have a way to change the starter without disassembling half the fucking car.
Solid. So let's see. This is this is him trying to get the last of the heat shield bolts out. I actually think it's the second one. It's got 3 10mm bolts that hold the heat shield to the starter. So you can see right there. I don't actually know which angle he came in at to get to that top one. It's probably easier to do it while it's bolted on, to be honest. But yeah, there's 3 10mm bolts you have to get to. You just have to kind of figure it out. Once they're off there, you can just wiggle that thing right out. And then, simple as taking off those 2 13mm and wiggling that puppy down. I mean, see, he's obviously still fighting it, and he has the extra space of that exhaust being dropped down, which is easy enough to do, so I would definitely recommend doing it. And voila. So now you have a 13mm nut holding the primary power wire, and then one plug that you have to get off. Seems like he had a bit of trouble with the plug. You'll see he ended up getting a flathead. Using a flathead to depress it. It looks like a clip flew out of it. I think it may have one of those little retaining clips in the back, like safety retaining clips. So I'm pretty sure right here, yeah, he gives up on the plug for a minute and decides to take off the power wire instead. And I think that gives a little more wiggle room to rotate it over and look at the plug a little better. And now he's down to the plug. So one flathead later, and he manages to fish that plug right off of there. Now that I'm getting a closer look at it, I think what actually happened is I think the red push tab that locks it in, anybody who's worked on GM vehicles has definitely seen those in the past. They have like a little spot you can pull with your finger to release the tab, and it like locks the tab in. And when he just zoomed in on it right there, it looks like what we saw fly off earlier was that tab breaking, just breaking in half. So I think the locking part of it's still stuck in there. So he actually had a booger of a time pushing that out, which is what he's pretty much doing here. And then once he gets it out, then it depresses like a normal clip. So if you're lucky, you don't break yours, it should just pull right out. And then you can squeeze it and pull it off. It shouldn't be hard at all. He buggered his with a screwdriver for a little bit before he managed to get it. But, I mean, that's that. We did not video putting it back in, but it's pretty straightforward. I mean, obviously, you fish the new one in, put a bolt in it, and then fish the heat shield in after it, bolt the heat shield back up. Make sure, obviously, you connect your starter wire and your plug to it, to the solenoid. And then, yeah, just stick it back up in there, get your heat shield on, and then bolt everything back up.
That's our high level of confidence.
Oh, yeah. Corvette repair, man.
Booyah!
You know the sound is that.
It doesn't crank for 10 seconds now?
I thought that was normal.